Hello, I'm Amanda Moore. I'm the director of the Clearinghouse Community. Welcome to our Shriver Hangout for May 2016. This is our monthly conversation with advocates who are advancing change. Now, both the Hangouts and the Clearinghouse Community are brought to you by the Sargent Shriver National Center on Poverty Law, which is a national leader in advancing justice and opportunity. Today, we are speaking with two guests. I have with me Miguel Willis and Aurora Martin. They're joining me today from Seattle. Miguel is the founder of the Social Justice Hackathon in Seattle, and Aurora is the executive director of Columbia Legal Services, and they're joining me today from the offices of Columbia Legal Services. So, hey guys, it's morning there, so good morning to you.
Morning.
Thanks for being with us today. I should also note that Miguel just finished his second year at the law school at Seattle University. So congratulations, Miguel.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I guarantee you our audience is very encouraging and sympathetic to your position in life right now. So we all understand you just come through finals, and that's an interesting memory for all of us. Well, Miguel and Aurora are the authors of our Clearinghouse article for this month. It is called Tech Justice, a conversation about making justice more accessible. That's what we're going to have today, a conversation about those things. You can find their article on the Clearinghouse Community. The URL is here on your screen. It's povertylaw.org/clearinghouse. And today we would like you to be part of this conversation. There are a couple of ways that you can join us. I know that there are a couple of ways that you're watching us right now. If you're watching through the Google Hangout itself, you can hover the mouse over the left side of your screen, and you'll see a column of icons appear. One of those is blue and says Q&A. That's the Q&A app. If you click it, a chat box will open down the right side of your screen, and you can submit questions to us that way. We'd love for you to go ahead and get that channel going now. If you want to just send us your name and where you're watching, that would be great. We'd love to hear from you. Another way that you can get in touch with us, send us your questions. If you have experience with hackathons or with using tech to improve your delivery of legal services, we would love to hear about that. You can email me. My email address is on the screen. It's Amanda Moore, MOORE, at povertylaw.org. I have my trusty dual monitor here, and we'll be watching for your emails while we talk. Love to hear from you. So without further ado, let's jump into this conversation about tech justice. So Miguel, I'd like to start with you as the creator, the founder of this Social Justice Hackathon in Seattle. Tell us, first of all, what that is. What is the Social Justice Hackathon?
Yeah, so the Social Justice Hackathon, or hackathon in general, is it's an event where subject matter experts get together with designers, technologists, other data scientists, and we create solutions to address certain problems. So for the Social Justice Hackathon, we created an event where we were trying to address the legal accessibility problem. So how can we increase the access to justice or access to legal services and improve the delivery of legal services to low income, to rural communities, to people with disabilities? So yeah.
Well, so I want to kind of jump to the end, and then we'll go back and talk about how it all came to be. But I'm curious, what came out of this? This was your first time doing it. What came from it?
Yeah, I was actually surprised at what came out. It was some really cool ideas, projects. So we have the Paid It app. This was one team. Basically, they created an application where it allows you to record your banking. So people, okay, so I'll back up for a second. People that generally pay their rent outside of the traditional means of payment, so they use money orders, cashier's check. When they pay their landlord, there's really no proof of payment for them. So whenever they go into court, if they get abused by a landlord, they have no proof. So what a team created was an application that allows you to record this payment and timestamp and date it, and it allows them to get an extra layer of protection if they were to go to court. for a landlord-tenant dispute. So I think this is a powerful app. We had another app that triages the neighborhood legal clinic experience to allow an attorney to get more information about the client and also provide more resources for that client when he leaves this clinic. So we had some really good projects coming out of the hackathon.
Well, those are really, they sound really great, and I'm eager to talk more about the mechanics of the hackathon. I do want to say hello to a couple of people who've let us know they're watching. We have Greg in Lafayette, Louisiana, and Lewis in Washington, D.C., so thank you both for joining us. I also want to note that if you're watching, you will receive a follow-up email within a few days. It will have a link to this recording, and it will also have a link to Miguel and Aurora's article. And anyone who registered will get that email. So if you have a colleague who couldn't attend today but they registered, they'll get that same email. So I want to go back now and talk about how this hackathon that had these such interesting results came to be. So Miguel, what did you do to get this ball rolling?
Sure. So it was 2014. 2 years ago, I went to and participated in a legal hackathon. It was called Seattle Legal Tech Startup Weekend. And I created a mobile application that allows law students to buy and sell their textbooks to each other on their campus. And just going through and participating in that experience was definitely cool. We got a lot done. I've seen how lean processes work. I met a lot of cool people, and we were solving a problem in 2 days. So my experience with that startup weekend, one of the prongs with that startup weekend was access to justice, but not a lot of teams everybody wanted to make the next Uber for Law app. And so we decided, going to Seattle University, their mission is around social justice. We decided to create a hackathon that was solely revolved around access to justice.
Well, that sounds great. So you got legal partners involved. So you had a tech side and you had legal side that would come together and sort of brainstorm and talk about these things. So my understanding is that you have people who present sort of what the issue is. And so I'm assuming, Aurora, that was part of what your role was in this as a representative from the legal services community.
Right. I actually served as a judge that knew nothing about these hackathons and very little about just really technology and startups. And so when I got the cold call from Miguel about, hey, we are organizing this hackathon, the Social Justice Hackathon through SU's Access to Justice Institute, I thought, let's see what all the fuss is about. And so I really came into it with sort of an open mind and an interest in going on this adventure about what role could tech have in these young people in helping us solve the problems of poverty, particularly as it relates to the delivery of civil legal services.
Okay, so that sort of explains how a legal person would come into this saying, let's see what could come of this. What do we have to lose if you come up with a great solution? Wonderful. But Miguel, how did you get participation from the tech side?
Yeah, so when I created the Casebooker app originally, I did a lot of pitches and I was kind of really involved with the startup community. So I would go to a lot of events, and at a lot of Seattle events, they have community time where, if you have an event going on. So I went to a lot of different events and told, and a lot of people really, want to do good. They want to use their talents. Seattle has a wealth of technologists, of developers, and they really want to be involved in projects, meaningful projects. So I went to a lot of events and pitched this idea, and a lot of people came out. We also marketed heavily at the University of Washington, at their schools, their design and technology programs at SU and UW. So we had a lot of students out, and they were super excited, and they were also coming into it not knowing the problems of the legal profession or the legal system. So this was a really cool educational experience for them, and they just came in and applied, their knowledge to a lot of these problems. And it was really good because they didn't have that bias that some of us have in the legal profession, where I guess we think we can solve certain problems, but we haven't quite got there yet. But it was just a really cool experience of having everyone in the room.
I think it sounds so neat to hear Aurora say, I don't know anything about this tech stuff, but I wanted to go and see. And it sounds like you had kind of the same thing from the tech side. People who really don't know anything about access to justice problems, or possibly even, conditions, legal issues that people in poverty have, and then come together to do this. So, Aurora, I'm curious what your impressions were then. So you're coming to this event. I'm assuming it's full of young, tech-savvy people. I think you may have even described it as hipsters at one point. So what was it like? What was it like to be there, coming in as a legal services person into this, not a courtroom environment?
Oh, it was great. And I should say that, I felt like a hipster as well, just by virtue of participating in it. But, I actually went in for the last day, and I understand that it was a 2-day process. And so I went there for the first day to kind of check it out, but I saw that everybody was very busy. And, my time was to come in and listen and hear about the presentations. They're sort of fast pitches of what they identified as a problem, what they identified as a tech solution. It was mostly young people and technologists, law students, as well as other lawyers who are very interested. But, other folks who participated through the American Bar Association Tech Committee, I think, were also there, other sort of technologists. But for me, what was so amazing and inspiring was the interdisciplinary nature of the gathering at the law school to solve the problems of civil legal aid. Not to say that technology is going to be the tool for solving poverty, definitely not. But I think that in that particular space, and then just observing the pitches like Paid It, to me, it was really a powerful demonstration of the fact that over a 2-day period, the focus on identifying and defining a problem from an interdisciplinary perspective of team members, technologists, law students, lawyers, as well as, kind of the user experience or whatever, I don't know what the term is. It was just a really interesting problem-solving process that resulted in a very practical tool that really addresses issues of evidence. It turns out that the Paid It application was addressing my fellowship project. I started at Columbia Legal Services about 17 years ago as an Equal Justice Works Fellow. My focus was on housing eviction defense. And yes, even then, as it is now, the folks that we actually served were unbanked and they didn't have a checking account. And the problem was non-payment of rent. And how do you prove the he said, she said situation? Well, the digital divide, I think, just exacerbates, I think, the problems of poverty, the vicious cycle. I think what technology can do and what the hackathon actually inspired me to think about is how can technology help create a virtuous cycle of invention, which reduces the transaction costs and actually of information gathering, and also empowers the clients themselves. But apart from that, apart from the sort of delivery of client services, because I think like other organizations, whether it's governmental, for-profit, or non-governmental, I think that we all know about the power of technology for capacity building, whether it's case management, document management, legal server, whatever, in terms of operations. But I don't know that we have thought enough about the power of technology and helping to create a virtuous cycle of as an anti-poverty tool. Even though I think when we look outside of legal aid and outside of the justice system, we see movements being I think, fueled by technology. Technology is a platform for education and movements, as well as the way in which people interact. So to me, it was that day and a half hackathon was inspiring on so many levels, on the big picture mission level, as well as how can we as a program be innovative as a civil legal aid program and as a civil legal aid program with a systemic mission. And then also just as being part of the community, how can we connect our work to the larger movements from which we were born?
Oh, that's fantastic. I liked your phrase about the virtuous cycle of invention, I think was what you said. That's a really nice way to think about it. We've had a couple of questions come in. One is more of a really interesting comment. This comes from Jeffrey, who is part of the Internet Bar organization, I think. And he says, congrats to you all. Oh, you know Jeff? Okay, great then.
Of mine.
Nice.
Excellent. Well, Jeff's watching. He says you all are doing great work, and some of the apps coming out of hackathons will help reduce poverty as they're adopted by organizations as tools to help their clients increase access to justice. He also wanted to mention that his organization also runs some hackathons for access to justice, and they have a website, techforjustice.org. So that's something else for people to check out if this is something that our viewers are interested in starting. That is something I want to ask you about. If people are interested in trying to replicate this where they are, what would you recommend that they do to start?
I would say the first thing to do is find a team. I remember when I first thought about kind of starting this project, I went to our Access to Justice Center, ATJI Center at the school, and I told the director, Diana Singleton, and she was the first person that really believed in this idea and kind of pushed me forward. But there are also a lot of resources online that I, kind of modeled after, emulated. The people at Tech for Justice are they have a lot of information and a wealth of knowledge to kind of do these events. And then, local leaders in the community, getting around them in terms of support and building just a solid team that can handle the project management aspect of organizing this event, and getting people that kind of know the people in the legal profession and also the technologists in the community. But yeah, it was definitely fun to organize this event. Never doing it before.
Well, I know one question that's never far from the minds of people at legal services programs is me. So Aurora, how could an organization fund this kind of initiative since it's not exactly a direct legal services project?
Very creatively, in the sense that, it's been just my time. And I should say that our primary funder, Legal Foundation of Washington, has been very, very generous and supportive of Columbia Legal Services, really trajectory for innovation, for capacity building. Beyond our own program. I mean, we have had a history of helping to put together programs and other civil legal aid programs, and working with other community-based organizations to help them in their capacity to more effectively deliver services to clients. So I consider this and my role and participation as part of that R&D, that research and development and innovation, to constantly be thinking about how can we meet our mission in the most creative ways possible. No doubt that, the majority, 90+% of our funds will go to direct advocacy, the balance of which goes to administrative. And I think my role, at least at this stage, as we're thinking about tech justice, my role is to do exactly what I did, was to respond to Miguel about an opportunity that's new, that presents a possibility of helping end poverty and helping enhance our impact as advocates. So In terms of funding going forward, I think that in some ways it expands the opportunity for collaboration, whether it's in kind or funding. If we come up with some ideas, there already are. This is not necessarily, the place where it started, because all over the country, all over the world, I think we'll see examples of how technology through mobile applications, technology through software programs have emerged to serve as, I think, vehicles of delivery of good, social good. And so I think in the American Bar Association journal, gosh, maybe a few months ago, they even featured an article about a farm worker helping to design or come up with the idea of a wage and hour application. So they're popping up all over the place. And I should say that the opportunity to create what's called this hackathon is actually, it's pretty broad. For me, I think that going forward, I'd probably definitely be working with Miguel and other law students, definitely with the law schools. But I think how we make this happen is collaboratively. And then once there are actual ideas, how do you market them? And I think that it creates, I don't know off the top of my head how you would actually, I wouldn't put it out of the question to pitch it to angel investors, but at the same time, there are certain grants as well for nonprofits, one of which some organizations might be interested in. The National Science Foundation has a large grant that is available for very innovative kind of intersecting technology and access to justice ideas. That's due in middle of June. So I think Karen Lash is probably a good contact to at least just get the link. I also have the link, so I can also put it out there for people who might be interested in applying for that. But there's a whole bunch of ways in which to actually put together a hackathon. Because for me, I came away from the event as inspired by the multitude of ideas in terms of the identification of problems, the problem-solving method, and the identification of potential solutions. The problem-solving method for me was very interesting because I tried to replicate that from time to time within my program. And the key is the interdisciplinary approach to the problem-solving. Whose perspective is missing, whose perspective is in, whether it's geographic, whether it's expertise, whether it's gender, ethnicity. And I think for me, what the next step to the hackathon that Miguel spearheaded is, where are the clients? And I think that the clients, bringing them in to help with the design process, addresses a number of things in terms of workforce development, in terms of real empowerment. Not every client is going to necessarily be ready or interested, but I think that's the next level, which is something that we're actually starting to think about, not from a legal aid centric approach, but actually from a much more workforce development approach.
Definitely, and just to add on, it's great to have these funders, but I think the bigger goal is to create these strategic partnerships with other organizations, other companies. And, the broader goal is to create an ecosystem where we have partners from legal aid, from, technology companies, from government, that we can all share ideas, this open space, that we can work collaboratively, and that we can, use our imagination to create projects. I think that's a lot of what's missing is just imaginative piece of what we see justice to be, or what we want to solve, and kind of really brainstorming at a whiteboard and coming up with solutions. They may not all work, but I think if we can just get closer and closer and keep chipping away, we are going to make a dent in access to justice, improving access to justice.
Right. I just want to say two things too, to kind of riff off of what Miguel just said, and that does go to the issue of why technology, and how can it actually involve, but not just impact, but involve client communities in the process. And I think by really including them in the design process, we're building upon the momentum of entrepreneurship and survival that I think profoundly exists within all our client communities. And I think technology allowing the opportunities, and I think there are a number of different programs already that exist that are in a job training kind of module or framework, and also through education. There are kind of nonprofit technology education programs. But I think what we're talking about here is also a kind of experiential learning as well, of which, I think the law schools and legal aid can really be involved in. And we aren't the only partners. I think the folks that were at the hackathon from other tech companies definitely have to be in. And I think they've got a lot of these tech companies, Microsoft and Google, Facebook, others, they already have a kind of spirit of giving. And there's a lot of young people too who want to participate in this kind of imagined world of creating a virtuous cycle. So I think that there's a lot for us to really, there's a lot of room, and I feel like there is, we're in a time of pioneering, which is why I'm so excited about it, because it's not just for the clients, but it's like, it made me think about the more effective ways we can deliver community education. Is gaming an approach where we can be more effective in delivering and demonstrating the impact of imprisonment and legal financial obligations and fines and fees, rather than a PowerPoint. And lastly, I would say, in addition to being able to shine a light on the opportunity of clients participating in something like a hackathon, I think we are also able to create the collateral, I think, how would I put it, the sort of collateral impact of shining a light on the hardware. Because the hackathon is about the ideas and the technology solutions, but we also know, while a number of our clients actually have access to smartphones, oftentimes it is their, or even a more basic phone, so we have to think about texting solutions for more basic phones. It may well shine a light on the fact that we need the hardware for the clients to have access and to really have a much more level playing field when it comes to communicating and learning and accessing one's private information in the modern world.
Mm-hmm. One of the things you mentioned is that, you see that this is something that could pop up in other places and already is. You mentioned the example of the farm worker working to develop an app. We had Greg sent us a comment saying that Louisiana held a similar hackathon last year, and one app that came out of that was a similar evidence collection tool. It documented rental unit condition upon move out to help clients be sure to get their security deposits back. So another example of where these types of events have real concrete solutions to some problems.
And I would actually pitch to whoever's listening, and maybe we could do it through, the already established networks. Again, there are all these different ideas and other resources that are popping up. I think it would be helpful if it is that we as a community share that. We form this other additional layer to our ecosystem of substantive training and exchange of information, but I think it's very important for us to also be in the know about, oh, well, Louisiana came up with this, Seattle came up with this, DC came up with this, and before you know it, we actually have a marketplace of sorts that is intended to at least collect the various tech tools that are client driven, in addition to some other solutions that may be coming up regarding capacity, whether it's community education applications, gaming tools, whatever.
Well, that's a great idea. And as far as you know, there's nothing like that out there right now that's sort of repository or a collection point for.
We're actually, I don't know. Miguel knows more, but we've been in conversation about all kinds of things.
I think the people in the national community, we're trying to build up ecosystems. I know A2J author John Mayer, what they're doing is they created a platform. It's called the Matching Portal, which allows you to it integrates technology and allows you to, for courts and legal aid organizations to allow law students and law schools to build up these guided interviews that help pro se clients. And just, I heard a lot of great stories from the Access A2J conference and Chicago this past weekend of what some amazing people are doing nationally to create these models and create these ecosystems. But there definitely needs to be, a national collaboration where, these projects are open source. These projects coming out of the hackathons, they have support to get them to implementation. And people and leaders in this space can advise these groups almost, like an accelerator model where you're going through a 11-week or 12-week kind of experience where you get your, idea from beta to implementation to the broader community. So we're working on it, but there's definitely a lot of room to do some amazing things. So yeah.
And what would be great is, while there are a number of different events, opportunities and solutions that are, happening all over the country, to the extent that we can try and build upon each one and build the ecosystem that Miguel is talking about, we really should take a step back and see if there's a roadshow like continuum that we can do, if there, so that something is happening in Seattle, it builds off of what happened in San Francisco, it builds off of what happens in Austin and Chicago and New York and so forth, so that we're sort of cumulatively, kind of both sharing and exchanging information and building off of each other's innovation for good. A lot of work to do, and I think that there's a lot of opportunity, and I'm definitely a firm believer, naively still, in build it and they will come. That is the funding. And so I think it's such an exciting and motivating thing, I think, for staff, as I shared some projects that I'm thinking about with, that are kind of riffing off of what Miguel has been talking about. And people, the sort of, you take them in a space of imagining justice. You take them to a space where you're saying, okay, set aside for now the rule of law as it is portrayed in the codes and in the courtrooms and in the legislatures, and let's just think about imagining justice in a different, practical, inclusive way. And I think it is really exciting and engaging for people, because when we think about, paid it, to me, what's remarkable is that it is an evidence-based, it's an evidence kind of gathering tool. Before they get to the courtroom, that would be nice to be able to take a picture or have a ledger of money order photos and then some. So I think that it's just inspiring, and the opportunity for us as a legal aid community and beyond legal aid to actually bust out and think about our message is a shared message of ending poverty, and our role as lawyers is one of many in that sort of kind of virtuous cycle of hackathon thinkers.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have reached the end of our time, and I have really enjoyed this conversation. I thought we would be talking about really nitty-gritty nuts and bolts. Instead, this has been this wonderful visionary conversation. So I thank you both very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
And before you all go, I want to let you know about a few other things. Let me get this on the screen. I'll invite you again to read Miguel and Aurora's article for more information. That's called Tech Justice, a conversation about making justice more accessible. You can find that on the Clearinghouse community at povertylaw.org/clearinghouse. And I'll remind you, everyone who registered for today's Hangout will get a follow-up email that will have that information, will have that link, and a link to a recording of today's conversation. Also, some of the things that were mentioned today, I think Aurora mentioned some links to grants and some contact information. I'm sure we'll also put Aurora and Miguel's contact information in there, so be on the lookout for that. I'll also invite you to join our mailing list for the Shriver Center at povertylaw.org/join, and you can follow the Shriver Center on LinkedIn. We have one other new thing I want to make sure you all hear about. That's the 2015 Poverty Scorecard. That's our Shriver Center's most recent publication. It shines a light on important poverty-related legislation considered by Congress in the past year and takes a comprehensive look at how each member voted on poverty. So it's an interesting tool. And keep an eye on your inbox for an invitation to next month's Shriver Hangout. Until then, keep up the good work and remember that you aren't alone out there. And thanks again for joining us.